It's a Ram channel now. All we do is Rams. Yeah, how not to install Fab 4.
How not to follow the instructions.
Well, we don't have any man cards left already, and it's still January.
This is not a Prius.
All right, so 2017 Ram. This is a 3500. It'll be the same as a 2500, but this is Fab 4 bumpers, front and rear. We're going to do those. I am going to, we videoed the whole thing. I'm only going to kind of point out some pointers and some tips. The rest of it, we'll just kind of go through it instead of doing step by step the whole way. So check it out. This goes pretty good. We do modify the front bumper for our winch, and that's something that a lot of you will probably want to do, and it's something that I want to encourage Fab 4 to do from the factory. But anyway, this is the first trick. Pull those mud flaps in from the bumper before you pull the bumper off. That helps. Otherwise, you are kind of fighting those on the way out. It's nothing you can't overcome, but I like the bumper just to come right off. I don't like having to yank it just in case you have wires or something attached that you missed as well. Okay, so for the intercooler, the only bolts you actually had to take off were the two there and the two there. And then with some finesse and some drama, you can get those U-bolts out. Worst case, if we had a grinder, I would have just cut them and it would have been a lot easier. You don't reuse those, so. I wonder why that light didn't work.
Oh, fuck.
Our bumper has parking sensors, so that's what we're going to be messing with here. You can completely omit this part if you don't have parking sensors. All right, and instead of painting these guys, we decided to wrap them. And on the back, we decided wrapping them wasn't really worth it. We painted them. So either way, it was more hassle than it was worth to wrap them when you could just easily spray paint them. If you're going to paint them, we use Rust-Oleum Professional, which is the top shelf at Home Depot. It is a really good flat black. If you just want them flat black, that flat black works good. I use that a lot around the shop. Okay, so if you do have these sensors, they have you glue them in. We did that, but to get them to stay before that, I just push a zip tie underneath the clip, and that made it big enough to where it gets real tight in the hole. That way you don't have to kind of hold it and hope it stays there while the glue dries. So, okay, so now we just bolt on the bumper. The intercooler's back where it goes. It's no longer in the way of the bolts because the bolts are going in from the outside. So this part, it's a lot easier to reassemble it than it is to unassemble it. We just put all these in somewhat loose. So that you can adjust it around. Keep it tight enough so that the bumper will stay. It won't just flop around, but loose enough to where you can force it to move around, if that makes sense. So just a little more than hand tight, and then once you get it exactly positioned the way you want it, once the bumper's on it, then you can tighten them up. All right, and if you can eyeball that, the flat part or the bolt pattern part of that bumper bracket, as vertical as you can, as square to the truck as you can. That will help you a lot, and then that'll make it pretty close to having the bumper sit where it wants. So we're just putting on the Badland Harbor Freight winch. This is the 12,000 pound winch. The relay panel on the top that we just took off there, you're supposed to have to remote mount that thing. And it's the same if you're using the Warn winch. It's the same deal. You have to remote mount that control relay panel thing there. And we decide not to do that. We're going to decide to modify the bumper instead. So we didn't know that wasn't going to fit under there. So we're going to attempt to put the bumper on with that winch there, and then you're going to see us fail, and then we're going to remove the winch, pack it up, and we're going to drive it up to the death tool shop so that we can modify that bumper up at the other shop. Instantly a change of scenery in the background. Now what I'm doing is I'm laying out, we're going to modify this bumper so that we don't have to remote mount that relay panel off the winch. So we're going to cut this bumper out. I'm just laying it out right now so it's exactly where I want it. I'm making it completely symmetrical. And then I'm going to use the hole saw so I have nice radiused corners. So I will drill a hole on each corner for that. And then we're going to use a cutoff wheel to cut it off the rest of the way. And then we will file it so it's nice and smooth. And then we're going to touch it up with the Rust-Oleum Professional that I was talking about earlier with a touch-up brush, which is actually just a makeup brush. So go ahead and steal your girlfriend or your wife's makeup brush and use that. Those are the best touch-up brushes that you can get. I've been using the same one for years now, and I just clean it out with lacquer thinner between every use. So when you're doing this cutoff wheel, I mean, the slower you can cut, the better. Just be as precise as you can, and you will not be able to tell that I modified this thing. So I'm using a little air or a die grinder that's electric on it with a carbide bit on it to round everything out and take off any burrs. If you have a burr on there and then you go to paint it, the burr will start rusting, and then that will start spreading underneath the paint and the powder coating. So you want to make sure you get that sealed up as good as you can. Plus, you're going to be reaching your hands in there to use that winch. So you definitely don't want to be cutting yourself on it every time you go to use your winch. You know, other than us, we no longer have the Fab 4 emblem on there. But I think that just looks so cool. And if you had a Warn winch, it would be a shame to hide that Warn winch from everybody. So now we're going to be putting in the marker lights. The fog lights. So what he got were LED. So we got 4 LED fog lights. And this is one thing, you're mounting these upside down. So you're going to be putting the left hand fog lights on the right hand and the right hand on the left hand because they're upside down. So the beam pattern actually won't be right if you put them on the proper side, quote unquote. So what I'm doing here is I just cut the factory wiring and I spliced on the weatherproof connector that they come with. And then we just bolt them on just like they're intended to do. That part goes really easily. There's not too much on that. So that's factory wiring. I just cut the factory end off and wired in the LED end. Okay, so these are a little bit tricky to get in, and basically you don't have to force it. You just finesse it. You can't. It's hard to see. That's why you see me kind of messing around with it a little bit. But once you get it in there, it goes easily, and then you can't figure out why it was so hard to get it in there. But both sides, for some reason, were giving me trouble getting them in, but there was really no reason for it. So right now we have a steel winch cable on this. That's something we're probably going to change that out to synthetic, but they didn't have any at the time at Harbor Freight. They do sell a replacement cable to convert that winch to synthetic, and we're going to do that because I don't like that roller fair lead on there. It looks not as good as the synthetic rope fair lead. So got the grill back on. That will be replaced soon. This rig's getting wrapped and all that stuff. And so that's just kind of temporary, but so we're not driving around with no grill. Now, instead of just cutting off the fender liners, I decided that we should modify them so that we're not filling the front bumper and mud would be coming out the hole where the fog lights are. So what I did is I just cut a relief in it and then used a propane torch and just heated it until I can get the thing to flex the way I want it to. And then I actually just zip tied it up so that it would stay right where we want it, so it wouldn't be flopping around. Once it cools off, it's actually pretty rigid and it wants to stay there anyway. But it ends up looking really good doing it that way. And it just keeps your bumper from filling up with mud and stuff. As you can see on my driveway, that thing was clean before it got here. And that's how much dirt just from our driveway, but we have a really long driveway that's dirt. So now we're working on the rear. The rear, very similar process to the front, but it is significantly easier to do. It doesn't take nearly as long. Okay, so this I used, I think they have you drilling holes in your connector and bolting it in. And what I did, I just modified the clips so that they would work kind of the way they intended, except the only problem with it is you to get it off of there or out of there, you'll have to go in and unbend them. But all I did was I just bent them until they would fit the thicker metal. That bumper is obviously a lot thicker than that factory bumper. So the clips weren't designed for that thick of metal. So I just modify them so they work basically the same way they did before. So now these are the the lights for the license plate. So again, they're LED, so you just have to wire them in. We put in the resistors and we ended up having to take those back out. Those actually created for some reason, this truck didn't need them. We thought they would. That's the resistor there. That is to, if you're replacing a incandescent light with a LED light, you would need that thing, but I believe that those lights must have been LED to begin with. So we ended up taking those out. It was actually causing a light code or the light out code on the dash having them in instead of not having them in. So we got that taken care of. So now bolting it on is a lot easier. It's just like taking the old one off, the original one off. So that part goes pretty good. All right, so what I'm doing now is either the truck is slightly bent or the bumper is slightly bent. So we actually have to tweak the bumper a little bit. So we just did that with some leverage and basically just twisted the bumper down once it was bolted on until it lined up good. So now it lines up the same on both sides. But otherwise, that's it. We're done. I did the same thing on those parking sensors on the back as we did on the front, where we used the zip tie to make it stay in there, and then just added some glue to the other side. The glue they give you is an epoxy stuff. Right Stuff, I believe, actually works better. Right Stuff gasket maker, that stuff works really good. That's what AEV uses to hold a lot of their stuff in, and that I like a lot better, and it's easier to get off when you actually want it off than the epoxy is. So otherwise, thanks for watching. We'll see you again real soon. We got a lift and wheels and tires going on this, and the next time you see this truck, it's going to be all wrapped, so it's going to look completely different.